Welcome to Entrepreneurs En Fuego. We have today with us. Oh, by the way, this is Entrepreneurs En Fuego. This is the show where our guests get naked. I don't know whether they told you this or not.
They did mention, but that's the way I'm not wearing pants. That's why. Yeah.
Please, let's stay down and below. Camera, please, above the waist. Thank you so much. Naked emotionally, my man. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, emotionally.
We just don't let me finish.
Sorry. I've had that problem my entire life. Taking things literally that way. No.
I am very honored, James Garcia.
You're honored that I'm not wearing pants.
and honored that we're keeping the camera above our waist because I'm not wearing pants either. So we have a lot in common already. I'm telling you right now, this is going to be just so much fun. Tell us about yourself, man. What do you do?
I am fundamentally a writer.
Yes.
That's what I do. And so everything I kind of do day to day here in the community is connected somehow to the word. So I'm a playwright, I'm a communications specialist, I do media outreach, I write speeches, sometimes scripts. So I just, anything that's sort of in that realm, and I do a lot of different things in the community.
To be a writer, when did you discover that you had the talent to be a writer? Is that something that somebody told you, hey man, you write real good, or was something that you knew, hey, I think I got a little gift over here, that I'm writing better than somebody else?
Well, I think I was probably a writer even as a small child, but had no clue what that meant.
Okay.
To me, even as a small child growing up in Laredo, Texas, in the projects, I thought writers were people who had good handwriting. That was sort of my image of what writing was. I didn't make the connection to literature. Years and years later, I had some kind words said to me by teachers that kind of stuck around in my head. But really, it wasn't until I was in my early 20s and I decided that I wanted to write and study journalism that I started to realize, okay, maybe I have some kind of a skill here.
Was there somebody that influenced you specifically that said, you know what, I want to be like that individual, I'm going to be a writer like this person?
Yeah, I guess in my case, unfortunately not, only because I didn't grow up around particularly literate people. I tell people, in my house we had two books. We had the Bible and the telephone book, and I think we read the telephone book more than the Bible. So in terms of having literature in my environment, it wasn't really there. And I basically in my late teens, early 20s, did sort of a crash course in terms of catching up on my education and really pounded through, because I had dropped out of high school. And so I went back to school, got a high school diploma, and sort of did a crash, kind of the pathway through my college career. And by the time I was done, I had a journalism degree. And so at that point, I started to think maybe I could write for a living.
You have your journalism degree, and a lot of people that are going to be listening to this podcast and watching the video that recently graduated with journalism degrees. I know my daughter is going for
no kidding.
Communications journalism major herself. They're going to be going, all right, so now I've got this little diploma. What do I do? How do you break through? Right?
I think this.
What happens
days,
at that point?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion going on, and it's true that newspapers as an industry are dying,
right?
Because the printed word, in many ways, is kind of a fading art, fading craft. But I don't think that means that there aren't opportunities for writers or journalists or anyone who has that sort of skill. I think that there are more opportunities than ever. With the advent of YouTube and everything that's happening on the internet and blogs and on and on and on, even Facebook. People are practicing the art of writing on Facebook even. So I think it's there, it's real, it's expanding. The opportunities are different than when I started in this business. You started by putting words down on paper, and maybe they got printed in a publication that was also on paper. Now the avenues are far greater, and there's greater avenues for independent writers to sort of take off out there in the industry too.
I understand the opportunities that are out there. In having said what you said, I agree. However, do you think that because of the limitations that technology, well, not limitations so much as the ability of technology to synthesize the word to 143 characters, or the message to 143 characters, and our attention spans going from being able to focus for 5 minutes straight to maybe just 30 seconds, the quick speech, the quick pitch type of thing. Do you think that wordsmiths are far and few
Well,
between?
yes and no. I mean, if you confine it to tweets
Yeah.
or even the 300 words or 200 words that you might post on a Facebook
Right.
posting, and that's kind of a long thing, there's still a craft involved. I mean, you still have to be good at what you're doing and getting the word across clearly, the message across clearly. But I also think that, frankly, it's overstated, the idea that somehow we're all confined to 140 characters just isn't reality. I think that if you go online, you can find voluminous, long, investigative journalistic pieces that literally go into the 3, 4, 5,000 range, 5,000 word range, and they're masterpieces. They're terrific pieces of journalism that are sparking conversations. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. Not to mention the volume of stuff that we absorb, even printed words from the internet now, collectively, maybe more than we did before. Because how many people, even when I was growing up, had the newspaper subscription and actually read it and took the time to read the whole paper. So I think there's so many more avenues that have opened up.
So you wear many hats, and you're also a playwright. And how's that? How's being a playwright? Because you got to get into many characters, right? You got to get into the mind of a lot of characters, multiple personalities.
Yeah.
How is that creative process? How does that work?
Well, I have this kind of basic rule as a playwright. I try to stay out of my way when I'm writing. I try not to get too engaged in the process and think about the consequences and whether someone's going to like it or not like it. I try to sort of let the process flow as much as possible. The things that I write about, though, frankly, have a lot to do with everything else I do. I mean, a lot of the work I've done, maybe a third, 40% of the plays I've written, have something to do with the subject of immigration, and not necessarily because I'm obsessed with the topic, but because I've kind of lived and breathed that issue for the last 15 years in Arizona. And anyone who cares about sort of where the state's been and where it's going can't help but be engaged in that issue, right? It's swallowed up so much of what's going on.
So your plays do have a social conscience.
A lot of the work I do, I think, can be categorized as social justice oriented work. I do comedies, I do dramas, I do short plays, full-length plays, adaptations. I just finished an adaptation of Hamlet, but it's not just a standard contemporary adaptation of Hamlet. I'm trying to comment on Latinos and politics in that storyline. So my central characters are Latino, and my Hamlet character is actually a Latina named Dulce, who's engaged as a filmmaker and also in the political world, right?
Well,
so cool. These are all things that I do as a speechwriter. I do this as a media expert as well, right? I'm writing press releases that have something to do with the Attorney General's views on driver's licenses and immigrants at the same time that I'm over here writing a play. So they overlap in that regard. The trick is to make sure that I keep the craft separate, right? Because
and how do you do that?
Well, I mean, you have to be conscious of. That you have to say, I'm over here creating fiction, because plays are fiction, is what they fundamentally are. A speech should not be fiction. A press release certainly should not be fiction.
Sure.
So I do have to make sure that I'm conscious of the rules of each genre and make sure that I stick by that.
How do you balance what you're doing with? Because in many ways you're an entrepreneur, right? I mean, because you're creating creating things. You're in many ways freelancing or writing this place for yourself, right? I mean, there's some creative juice that gets you, and you go, all right, I have to put these thoughts into writing, right? So what is that drives you as an entrepreneur? Because part of the show we're trying to find out is what is that motivation?
Well, I think
what lights your fire?
There's definitely something entrepreneurial about the creative process, period. I mean, but what drives me, I think, is maybe on some level, I try to sort of wake up in the morning and ask myself, what am I going to do useful today? Or I assess myself that evening. What have I done that's been of some use to this society today? And in order to kind of answer that question consistently, you have to be creating. I mean, you have to be doing something new. You can't simply do exactly what you did today that you did yesterday and really sort of feel like I'm accomplishing something broadly, right? And for me, at least, I certainly try to make a living at what I do. But more than anything, I'm trying to pick and choose subjects, topics that just engage me somehow, and that I feel passionate about.
And I think it's that social conscious that it speaks to you.
Yeah. But also, I understand too that I'm operating, frankly, in broadly speaking, a capitalist society. So
sure.
So I'm operating within that realm, but also trying to be creative as I go along through the process. And that can be, and you can be very creative when you're doing speech writing. You're dealing with facts and you're dealing with a particular issue, but there's some creativity even in that.
Do you get writer's block?
Not often. Not often. No, not often. I mean, usually I have too many things that I'm writing at the same time. That's usually my problem. It's like, I need to finish this, but I also have to do a rewrite over there.
Is that your biggest challenge, or what
my biggest challenge is that I probably should be awake 24 hours a day to get everything I want to get done, but I can't.
You have no idea. Let me tell you something. You have no idea. You have no idea how many of our guests, when we asked, what is your biggest challenge? It says, I don't have enough hours in the day.
Enough time.
I wish I could just clone myself and I could do this, and that. And there's not.
I mean, there are, I'm sure, going to be play ideas that I have in my head on the day I die that will just never be expressed, and I just have to accept that. That's life. You know, life is a certain period of time, and that's it, and you're done.
If you had to pick a playwright going way back to the 1600s, even with Shakespeare, who would you say you most resemble?
Oh gosh, there's no way I would even try to attempt that. I mean,
are you more of a Bertolt Brecht, where you disassociate with your audience?
I'm not Brechtian.
Are you more of a Miller?
I think frankly, as a playwright, I'm probably the kind of playwright that maybe Hemingway was as a novelist.
Okay.
Because he was rooted in journalism also.
Sure.
And so if you come to see my plays, you'll see reflections of contemporary events and historical events that could be in a news story, but somehow they've ended up in my plays.
What is the most or the proudest thing that you've written that you say, you step back and you go, man, this is good stuff?
Yeah, I'll hesitate to judge whether it's good. I'll let history sort of do that. But proudest, I did a play a number of years ago called Voices of Valor, based on the oral histories of Latino World War II veterans. And it was a project that someone engaged me in and had introduced me to, and I thought, oh, this could be a good play. By the time I was done, I had learned so much about those people who are of Hispanic origin, 500,000 plus, who fought in World War II, and what that meant to the progress of American society. And I was proud of not just them and what they had accomplished, but proud of the ability to have collapsed several hundred oral histories into 2 hours, and then met in the audience people that were in their late 80s and 90s who had been there, right? Who had lived through that, and to have them at least say, "You got it right." You know, they weren't necessarily commenting on the dramatic craft, but they were basically telling me, "You got the story right," and that was an incredibly proud moment.
That's cool. Going forward here, and we live here in Phoenix, Arizona. How do we repair the perception that Phoenix or Arizona is not welcoming to Latinos, now that we're talking about Latinos?
Sure.
How do we repair that going forward? Is there a plan? Is there a magic wand that we're going to wave?
Well, there's no magic wand, but there is a way to do that. And in fact, by coincidence, I literally left my office this morning. I was writing about this very subject.
How do I know that? I mean, we're also sayers.
Because it's pervasive, right? It's pervasive to us.
It is.
And I think that the first thing to understand is that the damage that was done was so severe that you can't fix the damage as quickly as you did it, right? I mean, it's
easy to do this.
It's kind of like a personal reputation, right? If you get caught doing some criminal act, everybody knows about it immediately. You're on the front pages or whatever. But it's going to take you a long time to correct that perception of you, right? And so the state has to understand, the people in Arizona have to understand it's going to take a while. But it's not going to happen unless we're extremely proactive about it, right? Unless we say, I use this example a lot. The city of Chandler, many years ago, had this thing called the Chandler Roundup. And you may recall this was basically local police just going crazy and starting to arrest Mexicans left and right, and U.S. citizens who happened to be Latino, and it was a horrific, ugly, racist sort of thing. Chandler immediately said, "This is not who we are. We're going to do something about that." And they took proactive steps by creating programs, by diversifying hiring, by doing all sorts of things that basically said, we're going to prove to the world, not just with lip service, but we're going to prove to the world with reality that we are not that kind of people, and that those cops were rogue cops and they were out of control. The state of Arizona has to do that. We have to come up with a way to prove to the world that we're not SB 1070, right? And we haven't done it yet, right? We don't have the leadership right now yet to take that step, but we have to have that.
Well,
otherwise it's never going to go away. Otherwise, 40 years from now, people are going to go, "Oh, Alabama, yeah, 50 years ago it was racist. it must still be racist now. That's sort of this perception, rightly or wrongly.
And for a
that's the
state, it's
perception.
very difficult
And
to
for a
turn.
state, it's very different. So
It's
you got to
very
be
difficult.
proactive. You got to do something about it.
Well,
right?
we're doing something about it. We're talking about it, and we're
Talking about
doing trying to change that. Look at, my goodness, even T-shirts fly at her.
T-shirts fly.
T-shirts.
How about pants?
Yeah.
I need pants.
Well, we're not getting up, my brother. This is for you. We have
thank
a
you.
little gift here for you. It's an Office Pile T-shirt, and you know what?
Fantastic. Thank you.
I could talk to you all day about
We could
these
have fun,
things
yeah,
because,
yeah.
man, because it's really a subject. This is for you, my brother.
Thank you, sir.
This is a subject that we really should be in the forefront. We talk about how we change perceptions, how we can get Phoenix, how we can get Arizona moving forward.
Yeah, and I will say this, not without presumption, but not only do we need a governor and an attorney general and leading public officials and leading business officials to deliver that message across the country, but a lot of that messaging has to be delivered by the Latino community. Why? Because we were the most impacted by the negativity during that period of time, right? We were the most damaged in many ways as a community, and we have to be there to be able to say, guess what? I look around, and most of the people that I run into are not racist, and have to believe that, and it has to be true.
In a very small way, James Garcia is our guest. In a very small way, we're doing that with this type of videos, with this type of shows that we have right now. And I'm very proud, man, to call you my new friend, man.
Thank you
brother.
so much.
Don't get up.
I won't get up. I will not get up. I will not.
We're up.